Still. Yes, right. Maybe not from the time.
Oh, gee, I don't allow those people. No money, but people got the first. Genuine letter.
Hi, Jim.
How you doing, Monty? Good luck on your retirement. I envy you.
Very awkward to eat. It's terrible. I bet. Have to go and get coffee.
You really need to call us more often. Don't miss you.
I promise to bring them in to the office. So you can come in.
And then go back down to the original office. So it's total plan including working.
Give the place up to escape. Hello, hello, hello.
It's only a little bit. There's some cerveza and some pork and soft tacos and guacamole and.
I guess it came out okay, but great. You never know there was
Duo.
Somebody's in for trouble.
D as in dangerous.
Yeah.
Wow, white chili.
Hello, Jim. How you doing?
Good luck, Monty.
Good luck, Monty. Yeah.
You're not safe around here, Chad.
I'm not saying too many places.
He's a real trier. He doesn't like the system.
Retirement party. My name is Kay Ferrari, and I had the privilege of working with Monty for 7 years before coming over to public services. We do have a program tonight that is going to help send Monty off in great style. So if you all would all like to get yourselves comfortable, doesn't mean you have to stop eating. Please continue. I'd also like to call your attention to the cartoon that we have at the back of the auditorium. We'd like to have everyone sign that before you leave.
Hello, Jim. Hi. How you doing? Pretty good, Joe. I didn't recognize you. Yeah.
Fine, how you doing?
And if you give a wrong answer, Monty, it's designed to
I'm going to get
make
some
you aware
food.
of it. Yes. Bill here, his lovely wife Anne, his son Mark, his son Kevin, his daughter Melissa, and their families are all here. He always had many words of wisdom to share with us as part of his family. And a couple of them, one phrase that I remember goes like this: short and terse. And you mostly heard that phrase associated with Bill Wood's memos. Legend has it that Monty came up with that phrase one day when he was looking in the mirror getting dressed. So I will introduction short and terse. The first of tonight's speakers who will come to wish you well, Monty, is Mr. Bob Parks, the former Deputy Director of JPL. Bob, if you'll come up to the...
All right. Well, when I was first asked to give a little talk here, I kind of thought about the question and said, how would I describe Monty in one sentence from my perspective here? And almost immediately, the answer popped into my mind. A quintessential safety person. Now, I've heard that word quintessential many times, and I thought I knew what it meant, but I better look it up in the dictionary just to be sure. And it has definition of something like consummate, the concentrated essence, and the most typical example in the sense of having all the qualities necessary, and things like that. So I think that word fits, my perspective at least, very well. Now, Monty's first work here at JPL was in propulsion, solid propulsion. And as I'm sure all of you are very aware, that propulsion is essentially a very dangerous activity, which reminds me for a little short story. When I was first deciding to come to JPL, they brought me over here to impress me by taking me up to one of the test pits. And they were going to show how this new fuel they were going to try to use, how well it worked. Well, they went through the countdown, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, there was a loud explosion. Boom! And they all looked around. Fortunately, the blockhouse was very solid, so nobody was hurt at all. Good safety thinking, I guess. But anyway, that was the last time they ever used nitromethane. That's a few. But anyway, but you can't make progress in propulsion without taking some risks. There's just no risk-free path. What you really have to do is decide which risks you're going to take and which risks you're not going to take, and be pretty right in making those decisions. So I consider that working in propulsion was an excellent background to a career in safety. And all the evidence we have sure bears that out, in the case of Monty at least. Now, he became head of the Flight Project Safety Office, and of course that was my job for many years. So as such, I've had a very close association with Monty for a long, long time. And my impression is that he always did the job in a very cool, calm, and objective way. He didn't let personal feelings or emotion get in the way at all at any time. And he brought an awful lot of know-how. And I guess a lot of that was from the propulsion experience. But another part of it, which is very important to a job like that, is diplomacy. And how do you get along with people properly and still make your progress? I don't know how he got that, but I suspect maybe he was born with it. Now, a couple of examples I'd like to touch on here. Now, of course, there are many day-to-day decisions and actions you have to make in a job like he had, but some of them require extended periods of time to work on before you can settle down to anything like what you might call a solution to it. Now, flight gear. We had an awful lot of flight gear that we had around the lab here, and we had to have a place to store it. Well, they first put storage in rooms that would protect it in many respects, except they still had the old water sprinklers from the standpoint of fire protection in there. And Monty got to worrying about what happens if one of those sprinklers goes off, either accidentally or on purpose. And he came up with a proposed solution, which was new to me at the time. I hadn't ever heard about it. I don't know how long he'd known about it. That was the use of halon as a fire extinguisher. This has the great benefit of not being damaging to the flight gear, and at least appeared to have many of the same qualities you needed to give you fire protection. Okay, well, this took a long time to get that idea across because there necessarily was a potential conflict in the issue here. On the one hand, there was a place for the safety of the flight gear, and on the other hand, there was the safety to the buildings and any personnel that happened to be in them at the time. And those both were important considerations that had to be given their full due. Now, if memory serves me correctly, there was one case where sprinklers went off accidentally and doused the pipe here. Is that correct?
Correct.
And, right, I think that was while the debate was still going on. And anyway, the Halon idea finally took the day, and I guess they're still using it. That's that right? So that was a very well thought but long-range effort that he had to undertake. Another one is a task that I think probably never ends, and it certainly didn't seem to end while we were around there, and that was the electrostatic protection of the integrated circuits. As the integrated circuits got smaller and smaller, they became more and more susceptible to electrostatic charges. And it was amazing how many places you could get electrostatic charges from. And it was kind of like the old balloon, you know, you push it in one place, it pop out somewhere else. And whether it was soldering irons that weren't grounded right, or smocks that were supposed to be conducting but weren't, or all kinds of things like that kept Monty and his crew busy chasing down and helping to spread the word around on what the potential dangers here. Give me your thoughts.
Oh, but this is for Bob. It's unsafe to interrupt. Well, I used to worry about what was happening or what my boss was thinking about, you know. And this one day I met Bob in the elevator. I had a very important question for him, and I was trying to give him the background of it. And about the time I got near the punchline, well, he said, "I'm sorry, I got to go." And he popped out of the elevator. He said, "I'll see you in a little bit." Okay, I waited and waited. And next time I saw him was in the elevator a week later. And he says, "Now, as you were saying," and I said, "Yeah." He repeated the last sentence that I had said, and I was able to pick up the subject at that point. I don't remember it now, but I'll tell you I was impressed with his memory, so I didn't ever try to pull anything on him. I think it's Mr. JPL. Thank you, Bob.
Well, we knew Monty wasn't going to be at a loss for words. We just thought he was going to give them to us a little bit later in the program. Our next speaker tonight is Mr.
Hey, that's just to say. Good.
Hey, guys.
Look at all this. Look at this stuff up here. What did you learn in this course?
But I've been warned JPL not to.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You know, well, we'll talk with you a little later about that, Monty. Monty graduated BSME from University of Texas. That's someplace, I think, east of here. And I guess he spent something like 3 years or so at Arnold. Then came to the laboratory in 1955. And it was in 1965 that Jack James, who was then the acting assistant lab director for lunar and planetary projects, appointed Monty to be the flight project safety engineer. Prior to that time, as Bob mentioned, Monty had been involved in a full-scale static firing of the Sargent motor. Had actually been engaged in doing some work on sterilization of solid propellant. It reminds me it's only 30 years ago and we're still not on our way to Mars. And also was heavily involved at one stage of the game in the interfacing between the Ranger spacecraft and the Agena. So with that kind of background, it was rather appropriate, I think, that someone of his interest could take over the flight safety activities. Monty has sort of an enviable record in the lab in that from the very beginning of the safety activities that he helped define and manage, we have never really had any serious safety issues in the flight project or flight instrument area. And it's to his everlasting credit that he's been able to convince the one or two hard-nosed flight project managers around the lab that they ought to listen to him. Instead of throwing him out of the office, why don't you just listen and I'll help you? And he was a great help. All of us have little phobias. And I like to recount one of mine. As you well know, as the laboratory grew, there was a lot of movement around the lab, like every couple of weeks. Move one office or another. Now, when I took over from Bob on the flight project, I started trying to keep my eye on Monty because I noticed something. Monty was always out looking around at these atlas and beacon moving things. And I didn't quite understand what that was all about. He kept telling me it was about a safety issue. Facts of the matter are, Monty is a real mover and shaker. He loves to move, that man. He was moving all the time. Now, I'm sure his staff was told over and over again, you're moving because Andy and Geverson have decided to use you as a pawn in this gigantic move around the lab. So maybe one of these days, Monty, you could straighten us out on why this love of movement. And also straighten it out with your staff, because neither Andy or I like to take the blame for all these moves that you take. Anyhow, we really would like to express our deep appreciation to you for what you have done for the Flight Project office. It is very evident that the background, the experience, the lore that you developed during the time that you headed the safety office was very, very beneficial when it came time for us to move into the shuttle era. And I think had it not been for that experience and that background, we would have been in very, very deep trouble, as you well could get. So we really appreciate that. We congratulate you on the job. It's been an outstanding job. You've been very, very well done. And a little side note, I happened to run into Jack James and chatted with him. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here because he had a prior commitment. And he wanted me to extend to you his same appreciation for forming up the office and setting the standards by which safety has now become a key part of the laboratory. And to also wish you well in your retirement, which I do too.
Thank you. I just hope my wife lets it stay steady. I don't have to move anymore.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Monty. Again.
Well, I've known Monty a relatively short time considering his tenure here. It's approaching 23 years. And during that time, we've been fussing and fighting and working together and cooperating. And we have formed a friendship that I value and treasure. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with as skilled a professional as Monty, and I've found him to be one of the most honest, honorable, upright people that I've ever known. Some of you may not realize that he's also a delightful traveling companion. We've been on quite a few trips together, and a few years ago, he and Fred Stoffers and I were sent to Rockville, Maryland for a NASA-sponsored 2-week course in accident investigations. We were formed up into teams and worked closely together. And at the end of the 2 weeks, the team leader of Monty's team gave little mementos to all the members of his team, things that would sort of typify what had gone on in our studies. And Monty received 2 little booklets. One was called Overcoming Shyness. The other was called Learn to Speak Up in Public. Now, Monty has been a devoted JPL employee, and he has put a lot of effort into his work here. And many people will find it hard to believe that he really could give it up and retire. So in order to help him, I have a little gift. I have some new business cards for him. They say, Lawrence C. Monty Montgomery, retired. No business, no worries, no job, no money, no prospects. How beautiful it is to do nothing and afterwards to rest.
Thank you very much, Fred. I'm sure Monty will put those to good use. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Al Wolf, the former Chief Engineer of the Flight Projects Office.
The subject concerning Monty is 99% safety price. The fact that he got started on it through propulsion activity was probably a very good background. As Kiyosaki might have said, if you're working in propulsion, safety better be your middle name. So it was nice for you to get into the safety aspect of it. And safety, by the way, is more than a four-letter word. And it covers the personnel as well as hardware. And in the hardware area, you have quite a range of design problems, design requirements, fabrication, testing, and operations. And so it covers a lot of different types of activities. And it takes somebody with a good background, a lot of intelligence, and an interest in it, and sort of a stick to it. Let's will carry on and don't let some of the problems sort of fall by the wayside. I had a complaint or a comment on how well you fit the bill. I guess I would probably say that, as Fred also mentioned, that you were probably a little shy. The activities, there are a whole bunch of stories that tend to go with all these different phases. So a story per phase, and it goes on and on and on. And one of the areas and one of the stories that I wanted to spend a half second on is the time that Monty took on the principal investigator on the infrared spectrometer experiment on Mariner 6 and 7. And this particular experiment has a small pressure tank about like that, hydrogen, very high pressure hydrogen. And Monty tried to find out from the experimenter how did he feel, or why did he feel that this system was qualified? And by the way, the safety factor on it wasn't really high enough. So the experimenter just sort of, don't bother, it's okay, don't worry. And finally, Monty kept poking at it and poking at it. And then he enlisted the help of Bud Schirmeyer, who was the project manager. And between them, they concluded that unless the pressure was reduced, considering the design, that the experimenter wasn't going to fly. The experiment just maybe put a box on it or a weight to take care of it. That was it. And so at this point in time, the experimenter decided to bring out his big guns, and so he went to the east and talked to his friends back there to get them to get these guys out of JPL off the back. And the Easterners supported the lab and the project, and so the experimenter had to start working on either redesigning or operating at a lower pressure. And the original tank, I guess suffered from hydrogen embrittlement, which wouldn't have been too good. Then he moved to another type of tank, which was, I think, nickel, which was somewhat porous for hydrogen. That wasn't in the long term, didn't very good. Eventually ended up aluminum tanks. Didn't work very well. There are other stories, I guess, in that era of the Mariners, 6 and 7. There was also an instance where there's a V-band that holds a spacecraft to a launch vehicle adapter. And this Monty was trying to find out, well, had that been properly tested? The project assured him that it had. And so they down at the Cape and hooked the V-band up and got everything ready to go, and then came back the next morning and the V-band was on the floor. I guess there are a couple other areas that never turned into anything of a great story, but they were always there, no matter what project or activity. One of them was worrying about the cranes and safety factors and how good the reliability was. And one time trying to pick up the spacecraft and one of the test stands because they couldn't get it shut off. Another one is in the pink plastic area, which I think a lot of people remember, which was supposed to protect flight hardware. And they did a pretty good job, except some of it seemed to always come off on the hardware. So there's always one new version of it that come along each time you get around to trying to launch. I guess there's the other side of the coin as well, that Monty was always able to take advantage of the seafood down at the Cape, and was a great oyster shucker. He could bloody his hands on those oysters as well as anybody. He also was a tiger at the bridge table and the tennis court. And I guess the one thing that I really appreciated is the fact that he always seemed to be going out of his way to help other people. And it sort of ranged from one end of the spectrum was working weekends and vacations, trying to get help Mark and Peggy build their house. And the other end of the spectrum was climbing under houses, which he did for me when I had the Cuneys, I guess about 15 years ago, and installed the TV cable so I could see something other than the ceiling. And I really appreciated that, and I don't know, I think you could probably do it now. I used to be able to get under the house, but maybe not this year. Well, Marty, it's been a pleasure to work with you for many long years, and we wish you the best, you and Ann the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Probably the furthest distance of any of you attending. He's Buzz Sawyer. He comes from NASA headquarters, Code Q Safety, and he is also going to make a very special presentation tonight as well as speak.
Hi, it's a real pleasure to be here tonight. I'm representing all of my colleagues at NASA headquarters in the Office of Safety and Mission Assurance. Fortunately, I was able to be here for a different reason as well, and so I'm able to also turn it into something that's pleasurable to be able to come see you tonight. First, I want to express my own appreciation to the relationship that I've had with Monty over the last 5 or 6 years as I joined NASA and began working with him first on Magellan and then Galileo. It's been a real pleasure to work with you and to see the cooperation and great spirit that you had in trying to tolerate those of us from headquarters that always seemed to know how to do the job better than you did. And so for that, you know, I want to thank you for tolerating us and everything. I did bring with me a letter that some of our colleagues from the safety division there at headquarters wanted you to have, and this is from Wayne Frazier, who is in the safety division there, and I won't read it to you. I'll let you want to. Yeah, I won't read it all. Okay. And then also, I'm going to be proud to present this plaque to you that comes to you from the Kennedy Space Center, from the Payload Safety Office, and this I will read to you. To Larry Montgomery, engineer, professional, and colleague, we send you best wishes on the announcement of your retirement. Throughout history, there has been only a small number of people that have made events happen that have had historical significance. You have been privileged to be one of these people. Like the many people who pioneered the conquest of the air, so have you been a pioneer of the exploration and conquest of space. Your contributions to at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory have enabled the success of space missions that are laying the foundation for the transport of men and women yet unborn to the planets and beyond. We salute you for your contributions to this endeavor. We also salute those to come who will build on your accomplishments and will carry our banner to the stars. In appreciation, we thank you. And it's signed by Chuck Billings, William Chanis, John Goldberg, Roger Drake, Ronnie Gooden, James Smith, and Jonathan Stapp. And so in conclusion, I'd like to wish you a lot of luck and a lot of happiness in your future endeavors, and you know, don't mess up the tennis elbow too much.
Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit now. We have a video presentation, so don't get too comfortable, Monty. We're going to put you to work. Monty, as you all know, was here in the mid-50s at about the time that they were working on the Corporal. And we've gone into the vaults here.
This one? Fortunately, no. I have to admit that I got in just on the end of the corporal as we were starting. That's right. There was Pickering's office and Parks' office.
And who's that, Monty?
I got him right down here. We want to see you afterwards. This has been changed around a little bit since last time. Burn his beard off. They're trying to move the earth. One of the things, this is wrong, but that was a shock absorber from the surveyor. Anybody who wants to know, that was a real happening in the safety day. Till the end. This is the boomerang rocket. It's on its way back.
No, it's true.
people still live here, still work here. These lots are now for sale cheap. I told you not to stand too close. My wife and I.
Mark.
So we knew it was going to be a lot about the work related, so I thought we should balance it out with a little bit about the family side of life. So and it wasn't just myself, Mom and my brother Kevin and my sister Melissa all pitched in on this one, and we put together a little slide presentation about family. And it's not just immediate family, it encompasses the much broader family, the JPL family as well. And I want to, first of all, I was walking around here, several of you know, with a camera just a couple of days ago trying to get a few snapshots. And so I want to apologize, first of all, to all of those that I didn't catch. I know there's a lot of people who should be in here and I didn't get your picture, but I was trying to do this in just a couple of hours. So I apologize, first of all, to you. Secondly, I apologize to all of those I did catch. The camera and I didn't get along all that great. But I put the pictures in here anyway. Some of them were a little dark, and you know, you'll recognize yourself, I think. But so bear with me on that. I was kind of a quick job. So let's see here. I've got the controls. So now, can we? I don't know if we get rid of the video. And I have forgotten some. Kevin, can you bring the lights up one more time? No. I promised that I would introduce the family. I'm going to introduce the immediate family. I'm, of course, Mark. My mom, Ann, is right down here in front. I don't know, you probably don't want to stand up. She has broken disc. My brother Kevin, back here in back. Yeah, there we go. My sister Melissa, back in the far corner over there. The spouses and grandkids and all that would just kind of wave your hands. There you go. I apologize for that. You know, this is a sobering. All right, everybody has to start somewhere, and since this is your life sort of thing, we're going to start at the very beginning. Yeah. The very beginning is San Angelo, Texas, and for those of you that don't know the Texas connection, you're in the wrong retirement party, I'm sure. And there he is a little bit later with his brother, I would say. And as you can see, he joined the Navy when he was 13. Actually, he had I guess, a semester of college in, and then he got volunteered for the Navy. And the story goes that when he came back from boot camp, he was proudly wearing his uniform, and a lady on the street stopped and said, "Hey son, that's a great outfit. Did your mom make that for you?" Looking guy back then. About 15 minutes later, my daughter Shannon walked in. She's 13, and she sat down, and I was flipping through slides trying to figure out what we're going to do, and ran across one when I was in my high school days. And she says, "Hey, Dad, you were a hunk. Look at all that hair." So I got put in my place, and I checked with Mom. She still thinks you're a hunk. And he was there on a swimming scholarship. So that was the early years. Now it's time to get serious. By the way, this is the place where one of the most important events of their life took place. And that's only been disputed by my brother and my sister. Yeah, my folks claim it was an accident. I think Kevin wants to think that's still the best explanation. And then if you've been here any length of time, you've seen this one several times, I'm sure, and heard this story more times than you want to hear. But so far, that's the big one.
General Turner even accused me of photography. Unreal. That's 60 pounds down.
He wasn't willing to let go of that. First of all, he didn't want to just stuff the whole thing because then we couldn't eat it. So we had salmon steaks, but he kept the head in the freezer for more than a year. And Mom says, "What in the world are you going to do with that thing?" And he says, "Well, I don't know, maybe I'll mount it someday." Finally, maybe it's more than probably 2 or 3 years. Anyway, so there a long time. He says, "I'm going to put an ad in the newspaper." So we knew that he lost his marbles and put an ad in the newspaper and sold it to a guy. Anyway, now this is preparation for retirement. Mom's been trying several things. You know, this retirement thing's been coming on. So first of all, she thought maybe trying to chain him and keep him close to home might work. But on second thought, she tried a different technique. But before she carries all the way through with this one, she ought to realize that he'll be able to bring his engineering skills home and use them on domestic chores such as cleaning the shower.
This dream is for all of us. It is more than me. Whatever dreams we have, they're for the family. We're not alone anymore. Now there are others there. And this dream's big enough for all of us. So don't think you're going, you're not waiting. I'll be there. We are a family, like a giant tree, branching out toward the sky. Giant tree, growing stronger, growing wiser, and we.
Thank you very much, Mark. Kevin Montgomery providing. You have a very talented family, Monty. You should be very proud of that. Monty, you know that is
Short and terse.
He speaks like I write, huh? Yeah, anytime. Well, kind of on a serious note here, let me get on a serious note here. There's been a lot of fun in games, been a lot of fun here, and that's all fine and well. But I thought here a few days ago we ought to try to maybe recap some of the most significant things. It's pretty hard in a career like Monty has had to do that. But I thought, well, if we talk about maybe the documents and things like this that have been of significance around here, that have been generated at the lab, that have had a significant influence on system safety, that might be something worthwhile. I guess it's already been alluded to, Jack James added Monty back in 64, 65 to become system safety engineer here. And the notice that is back there right on the thing, Jack James asked me to do it. I guess after to work with him in 72, started in part-time then over another section. We began to work into it. Recent actually joined his group. I like to say I worked with Monty, not for him. Around the lab, it's pretty much that you work with people. A couple of days of the year when Monty's getting his high horse somewhere, and he'd tell me something needed to be done, and I'd say, no way. So he was only wrong twice a year. The rest of the time, with, not for Monty, I'll tell you that. I think JPL's profit is significant from system safety around here. Has been alluded to before by Gene and Bob here and some of the others. Some might disagree with the system safety stuff. Sometimes we get people's hair. But I think the bottom line is that it worked pretty well, and management continued in working around like 20-some years with Monty on the system safety things, other NASA centers, contractors, and things. I have never really seen so extensive an approach, the kinds of things that tend to be looked at to do a good system safety job as we've had around here. And I think much of it's attributable to Monty's influence. He didn't do all of it, but certainly those he didn't do, didn't write, didn't prepare, he fostered, and it was through his influence a lot of these things happened. And I think the lab director has been pretty impressive on that type of thing. The disciplines here continue to be employed. The thing is, there are so many things that really need to be done according to the way we theoretically watch system safety. There just isn't a big enough staff to do it. Nonetheless, we use what time we can to do the more significant things. I think this can best be addressed by addressing some of these tools and techniques that have been utilized through the years here, and we tried to create a little list here and elaborate on them a bit to what's happened over the last 30 years. So if we could have the projector on for this particular slide. Here's the thing that the committee put together, and you can see it's been signed by the director and the deputy director down here. First off, the JPL Standard for System Safety Practice 601-4. That's kind of, if you use the term, the Bible for system safety around here. Monty first started, wrote the original one. Various of us have done some updating on it. But that's the fundamental document, and I've never seen anything where it's so comprehensive as the approach that puts forth. The next thing, the crane and handling equipment spec, ES 501492. I think it was alluded to some time ago with Al or Gene mentioned something about sometime they tried to lift up the test stand of the spacecraft down at KSC for ETR really, when the crane ran away. Shouldn't have, but it did run away. And it lifted up, we put about, I think, 2.76 times the stress into the handling fixture that was supposed to have been there. That wasn't supposed to have happened, but it did. One of the things Monty and some of the mechanical people have fostered for a long time is let's have plenty of safety margin. Let's be conservative on this. So our spec is much more conservative. We typically want a 3.5 modified or endorsed. And that's a lot of verbs there. I couldn't think of many more, but that's what we put together. So Monty has go to Mars. We didn't want to take any germs there and contaminate the surface. So that's three things he got patents on too. So I think that's kind of the extent of it. I might mention that Jack James' original memo over there announcing Monty and some pictures of some of that sterilizable, heat sterilizable propellant are over there, and a paper. Monty gave a paper at a symposium on that subject, and they're sitting over there. So let's give Monty a big hand. The director and deputy directors are concerned.
Thank you very much, Bill. Well, Bill has review.
Thank you, Kay, but I really have to correct something you said. When they showed those cars, you said that was Bill Wood's car. I've got to make it very clear. If Bill Wood's car was sitting there, it would look like an antique compared to those cars. Bill Wood's car was about 12 years old when those pictures were taken. Now, Monty came here in 1955, the same year I did, and I would see him occasionally, not very often. I'd go over to see Sol and Theosaki and some of the fellows over there, and sometimes go up there where Chuck Cole and Johnny Small were. I never knew whether you belonged down in propulsion or up there in the 111, so I wasn't really too sure where you were. But I wasn't at all surprised when you were responsible for the heat sterilizable solid engine. Now, Monty was giving this presentation. Most of you have heard this story before. Giving his presentation on his heat sterilizable solid engine. And this fellow from headquarters looks at him and says, now you know that is really pretty high technology stuff. Are you sure you people at JPL have the capability to do something like that? And Monty looked at this guy as just as steely as he could, very sternly said, sir, you must remember, propulsion is not going to ask another question. That was the end of that. Now, after that, this has been said, Monty got into system safety. And I've wondered about that a lot. I met a fellow very recently that was head of safety at Exxon. And the way he got that job was by blowing up a refinery. I've wondered what it was. And that's not that unreasonable. No, we had a fair number of little bangs around here in the late 50s and a few less in the 60s. I can remember one little explosion that came up and Kiyosaki was having coffee in the cafeteria. Kiyosaki says, well, it's probably all over. He stuffed his cigar in his mouth backwards and ran out the door. So that is not totally impossible that he did have an explosion. I want him to explain that, so we can remember just what it was he blew up that caused him to achieve that honor. Okay, Monty's going to have a chance to get back in a minute, so I'll leave that to him. I would like to present you, sir, with a plaque in recognition of your service to the laboratory. Thank you very much.
Well, Monty, we have one more presentation before you get your chance. And I must say, Monty, you're one of the most youngest thinking persons that I have ever met. And as they say, in order to keep yourself young, you have to keep learning. So your friends and your family who have come here to wish you well have decided to send you back to college. And we'd like to present you with this certificate to the Vic Braden Tennis College. Get unstuck in the balloon. Okay, Monty, you've been very patient all evening. You've said almost patient. Now you have your chance to refute any of the statements that were made before you. Monty Montgomery.
I do greatly appreciate all of you who turned out here to wish me well. It is very stirring to me that I have so many friends here at JPL, and I appreciate all the things that you've done for me. They did say one thing that was perfect as far as I was concerned. In fact, it took the words away from me. I have two families. I have my family, my blood family, and spend a lot of time with them. And then I have the JPL family. And that's what JPL has meant to me all of my career here at JPL, because it's all been integrated activity of people working together, doing things that they enjoy doing. I couldn't have asked for a better place. I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm glad that I came here and was able to contribute a bit to this place. But the wonderful people that I've met here is what made it all worthwhile. And meeting people that you can work with and study with, and I should say fuss with now and then. I did give a lot of people a hard time, and or maybe I was just responding to the hard time they gave me. But either way, it was a job. It was one in which I felt there was a lot to be accomplished. I believe that I did it to the best of my knowledge anyway, to the best of my ability, and I'm proud of the success that we've had. It's been a great thing being part of JPL. Thank you.
I see you were taking your own advice. That was short-handed. Thank you, everybody, for coming on behalf of Monty and his family and all of the JPL family. Please, before you leave, don't forget to sign the cartoon that we have on the easel in back. There's still more food there. And have a safe trip home.
and you can meet all your answers in one.
Where'd you get all that talent? Where'd that come from?
They had to have it back.
We'll see you again.
Sure.
Okay.
All the best.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Toots. Hi. Your family did a nice job. What did you do to yourself? Why did you do that? Needed entertainment?
That's great. This was super well done.
You may want to break that.
Walking it. Well, when you can give
Well, you got through that, cowboy.
Good job. Very nice.
Well, everybody else did very good too. Your video was great.
It's a team. For you, that was close to speed. That was speechless. Very good.
Pretty good. How are you doing?
You get them all, don't you? And they're both characters.
The stories I can tell about her.
Oh, I bet.
Hey, Jeff, tell her now. I will, but after she goes.
How do you know? You haven't seen it yet.
They only open till 6, so
Yeah.
you can't be.
Another one says, I look like my mommy.
They were having rehearsed it.
Well, usually those are the best kind, right? They're very well put together.
Well, I didn't even have anything written up. I was thinking of an introduction before.
I'll talk to you.
Take care, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Have a good night.
I'm going to see you again soon.
There's a story behind catching that huge fish. What was the story?
Story catching that huge fish? Well, I'll have to tell you when I get home instead of right now, okay? Hi. How you doing?